Okay. All right, I'll make sure we're good on the technical side and I will be right back.
I do have one question. That's Nicholas. How do you pronounce your last name? Is he still there?
Oh,
There he is. Holce. Okay. So, like it's spelled. Just want to check.
yep. Okay, Tony, I think we're ready.
Good evening. I'm Chessa Grasso Hickox, president of AAUW Walla Walla, and I would like to thank you for joining us for the first night of the 2022 General Election Candidate Forum. Tonight, we will be hearing from candidates from 16th Legislative District State Representative Position 1, Walla Walla County Auditor, and District Court Judge part-time candidates. We appreciate you all being here for this chance to get to know the candidates and their positions on the issues. I would like to thank all our partners who made this forum possible, which include the Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Walla Walla Association of Realtors. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to Kyle Tarbett, President and CEO of the Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're excited to be hearing from our candidates who are running for offices coming up here pretty soon. I want to remind everyone, if you are watching via Zoom, you have the opportunity to ask questions of our candidates, and you will do that through the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. So you just click on that, it should pop up a window, and you can enter your question there. Now, we do have a few rules that I want to remind you of. It's important that any questions that you ask go to both of the candidates who are facing each other tonight. So you may not direct your question to a specific candidate. It will go to the office and both will have an opportunity to respond. Just be aware that our moderator may tweak the wording of your question Please avoid asking a yes/no question, as we're trying to allow the candidates to express their experiences, their ideas, and their qualifications to run. So if you can ask an open-ended question, that is most appropriate. And then as well, we want the questions to be relevant to the office for which the candidates are running. So ask questions regarding things that they may actually be working on if elected to that office. And as always, if there is any profane, inappropriate, or accusatory language, you may be booted from the forum. So please keep it clean and help us provide some dialogue for our candidates here. Thanks everyone again for watching. I would like to introduce Claire Valente, who will be the moderator tonight, and I would invite the candidates for State Legislature, District 16, Seat 1, if you can bring your cameras up, and if everyone else will mute yourself and hide your video, please.
Okay, we're ready to get going. I just want to reiterate what Kyle said about sending questions, putting questions in the chat. We have a couple questions to get rolling with, but and some opening statements, but this forum only works if we have people sending in their questions. So please don't be shy about doing that. But we'll start with opening statements from our candidates for legislative office. And we're going to have 2-minute statements from each of those before we get into the questions. And Jeff, we will start with you.
Thank you to our hosts for this evening's forum, and thank you to all of you joining us from home. Yesterday, I walked about 12 miles across Kennewick, and I did the same on Monday, and I did the same 4 days last week. I've knocked, and my campaign has knocked, on about 9,000 doors from Benton City to Waitsburg throughout this campaign. And the reason is simple. I've wanted to hear from you. I've wanted to hear what's on your mind. And what you've told me consistently is you're concerned about the intersection of jobs and housing in our region. It's really simple. If you can't find housing that's affordable, then maybe you can't take that job. And likewise, if you're struggling to find appropriate childcare, then can you take that advancement at work? And for that matter, can you find the jobs that pay well enough to keep you here in this region? You've been very consistent in the messages around these issues, as well as about healthcare. And you're concerned about finding appropriate access to specialty care. Many of you have shared, as we've talked about in these forums and so forth, you're having to go to Boise or Spokane or Seattle to get the care that you need. We've got to work on all of these issues together. You're also very clear in your concern about our infrastructure, our roads, our schools. These are fundamentally the things I'm running to help serve you and to help improve here in our region, so that this can be a place of opportunity for all of us, a place where we can put down roots. I'm excited to answer your questions this evening, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. And now we'll turn to Mark.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire. And thank you for everybody that sponsored this, AAUW, Association of Realtors, Chamber of Commerce. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Jeff, for participating in this as well. I come from many generations of farmers and ranchers, community people, clear back to 1861. I've been part of the legislative district, and my family has been a part of it, the community, the custom, the culture throughout generations, and it's been a wonderful experience. And we're part of the community. We haven't just moved here. We've been part of it. I also had the opportunity to serve in the legislature the last couple of years. And we saw a change in the legislature that was unprecedented. Something that changed because of leadership under the leadership of Lori Jenkins, and also compared to the leadership of Frank Chaw, who allowed us to work together. Unfortunately, with what we ran into, we weren't able to work together the last 2 years because of COVID, but at the same time, because the majority pushed through different laws that didn't work for the people of rural Washington. Are you aware that out of the 2021 session, new taxes are being raised, and they'll start in 2023? You will pay for them in fuel. You'll see a $50 to $1 raise in taxes. You see, we're seeing legislation to eliminate crime and allow fugitives to run. There's all kinds of things that are going on that really conflict with what we deal with in our area. I look forward to the conversation, and I look forward to visiting about the issues at hand.
Thank you, Mark and Jeff, for your opening statements. We're still waiting for questions to come in from the forum for legislative positions. We'll ask one of the prepared questions while we wait for that. And so the first question is that I'd like to ask both of you, and we'll start with Mark, is what issues do you see as the most critical in the 2023 legislative session?
I look at taxes. Number one is one of the biggest issues. Taxes are going to hit us hard in 2023. You're going to see it. You see the gas prices going, they'll skyrocket here pretty soon, but in Washington State, they'll be probably one of the highest in the nation. I also see some of the laws that we're dealing with in crime, as I've mentioned before. It's scary what we're going to encounter. Police officers have no control. Then I also see the energy issues at hand that are really scary, especially taking away natural gas is what the push is for. So there's a number of issues that are radical laws that are being passed, and some laws that they're trying to push through that don't work for us in Eastern Washington.
Hey, thank you, Mark. And Jeff, what do you think are the most critical issues for this upcoming session?
You know, I think there's certainly a conversation to be had about taxes, right? I mean, at one point, I'm just barely old enough to remember when the lottery tax was supposed to fix education, and then the marijuana tax was supposed to solve other problems, right? And obviously now we've got a capital gains tax. There is a valid question to be had around taxes, you know, and whether we've got a fair taxation system. But I'll tell you, that's not the issue that voters at home keep telling me is really on their mind. At the end of the day, they're more concerned about their rents and about housing and about jobs that enable them to afford that housing. And it's really simple. If they can't afford housing, they can't remain as residents here in Eastern Washington. That's the fundamental issue that we've got to focus on. And I think, you know, it stems from job growth, right? If the jobs are not there, I mean, you can't afford to buy a house on minimum wage. You can barely afford the rent. And so we've got to focus on job creation through our region. And that's a combination of working with our vocational schools. It's a combination of working with our unions to grow our apprenticeship programs. And it's a matter of working with our employers. You know, employers are telling me that housing is now a competitive issue. They can't bring enough people in, you know, to fill those jobs. So that's where we've got to focus our effort, is on the economics of our region.
So that provides a nice segue, because the first question that we had come in on the chat was, what are some solutions that you see for affordable housing? So Jeff, housing, what can we do about it?
You know, it's a multifaceted question. I will say that I know that throughout Eastern Washington, many Republicans are talking about the Growth Management Act, and certainly there's tweaks we could do there. But the reality is we've got hundreds of homes being built here in Walla, in Benton City, in Prosser, in Burbank, and in the Tri-Cities. We need to continue to build more houses, certainly. We also need to be very cognizant of water rights issues as we have a growing population. What does that do to our natural resources in the area? And as I say, fundamentally, we know it's an economic issue. It's very simple. The Walla Community Council did a fantastic report on this. I know I've mentioned it many times in these forums, and it's spot on. The problem is one of economics. You've got to have a balanced economy where there are jobs. Jobs solve so many things, right? When we talk about all of these issues, it all comes down to, do you have a chicken in your pot at home? Really simply. And so we've got to focus our economy on how do we create the right jobs in our region? How do we support organic business growth? I don't want another Foxconn like in Wisconsin, right? I want organic growth, helping our businesses become strong and stable, and helping our communities here locally.
And Mark, what do you think are the solutions for affordable housing in Walla Walla?
Absolutely, and Jeff is right. Housing is really expensive. However, there's a point that's being missed. It's called regulation, Growth Management Act, and permitting. And people would love to move to Walla Walla. Unfortunately, it costs too much to move to Walla Walla. To get a permit, it's extremely expensive. They're over-regulated, and the Growth Management Act does not allow us to divide properties unless it's being pushed into urban growth. You have to be able to upsize tax lots, not downsize. And when you say upsize, that's bringing it down to smaller lots. People can't afford it. They can't afford the lots, and they can't afford to be able to build in the city of Walla Walla. Watch the growth all these years. As I said, we've lived here for generations. In the 1920s, our town was right around 22 to 25,000 people. We're not much more than 33 to 35,000 people. And since the Growth Management Act since 1990 has really put a restraint on us being able to build. It has to change. It has to change on the permitting to relax it to where people can build. It's very difficult where we can't have multi-person housing in there. And it's only the people that can actually afford it that can put a home in there. So it's a very difficult situation.
So that brings us to the next question from our audience. Homelessness. Homelessness is definitely a problem here in Walla Walla County, in rural Washington. I know that everything on the news is always Seattle and Portland, but we have a problem with homelessness here. So Mark, what do you propose that we do about homelessness?
I think homelessness is a big deal. We are really fortunate that we have the pods, the homeless camp in there, but we need to go a step further. Homelessness, if you look at the documentary called Seattle is Dying, there's two episodes on that. Homelessness, the people they interviewed actually talked about homelessness. About 99% of the people there are addicted to drugs. It's a drug issue and a mental health issue. We need to address it. We need to develop legislation that will house people in a rehabilitation center where they can get counseling, learn how to work, and get out of that. Give them a choice, either being able to go into a rehab center that can help them, not for a few weeks, but for maybe months. Put up a rehab center throughout the state or different rehab centers, not only for the people that choose to go into it, but it will help them change that culture, that lifestyle that they're in. So many of them grew up in that lifestyle, and help them change it. Fund for counselors and reward them to be able to choose that avenue, to be able to find rehabilitation and start a new life.
Jeff, what do you think the solutions or some solutions are for homelessness in our area?
So I think we've got to start by acknowledging that homelessness, people become homeless for a variety of reasons. In some case, again, it's cost of rent. It could be, again, loss of job. It can be, there's so many different reasons, right? And Mark's right. There is certainly, drugs, there's mental health. So I think we've got to start by trusting our experts in this area, listening to their advice as much as anything. But again, there's no one size fits all solution here. It's a matter of understanding the demographic, if you will, of our homeless community, and then finding the appropriate solution, which again could involve detox centers, which we desperately need in our area. It could involve mental health, which again is a desperate need in our community. It could involve again finding ways to those families that truly are transient, that had a home and for whatever reason are no longer, they don't financially able to afford a home. How do we get them into programs that do provide housing and do provide a conduit to get them back on their feet and back into society? So let's talk to our experts about this area and then understand the range of possible solutions across the demographics that are homeless.
I want to shift a little bit, but I think it's connected to homelessness, particularly with regard to the mental health issues, but to health issues more generally. And we have a question coming in about healthcare and what are your views on healthcare, on it being a right, on the state's responsibility for healthcare, and how do your views on healthcare influence what your position would be with regard to state support of funding, particularly with regard to Medicaid? And we'll ask that question first to Jeff.
So one thing I would note is that I think we're all very frustrated with the federal government and the lack of action there. And as a result, I think we have to take matters into our own hand at a state level. We can't continue to have people going bankrupt in this country because of healthcare. We can't, all of us at some point in life are going to get sick. We're all with luck going to age. And so we need to think about healthcare as a continuum, and at every phase in life have appropriate programs. And yes, I think it is something that this is a place we know worldwide where government can be an effective agent for change. And while I would prefer to see that happen at the federal level, simply out of funding, we may have to deal with that at the state level because it's just a reality. People can't afford healthcare, and the current system is absolutely predatory. And so, you know, I'd be happy to, I mean, again, trying to answer these kinds of questions and solve this issue that's been ongoing in our national debate for years now in 2 minutes is very challenging, but it's absolutely something that we have to apply solutions for. It affects all of us, and government is the answer at the end of the day.
And how about you, Mark? What's your views on the state's role in healthcare?
I look at it as a matter of choice. You know, we should be able to have the choice to be able to move our health insurance across state lines. We don't have that opportunity. The insurance commissioner and the state and the legislature has reduced the amount of companies offering insurance down to just a very few. And so we don't have an opportunity. We don't have that choice to pick and choose what type of health insurance we can use. At the same time, we need health savings accounts. That's another portion of part of choice that people can utilize. Haven't developed a very quality health insurance program or a health savings account, and that's what we have to be able to do, is make it possible that people have a choice, and they can go, if they need to buy health insurance or utilize it in the state of Idaho and Oregon or whatever, move it across state lines. But we're not allowed to do that at this point. We have to keep it in-house. And that really makes it difficult to be able to utilize the health insurance that we need and be able to move around. At the same time, if people want to be able to pay out of pocket, they should be able to do it without having to go through the process of the insurance portion of it. So there's a number of things they can do. The legislature needs to be aggressive and go after it in that respect.
Just one more question on the healthcare issue, and we'll start with Mark this time. Is there something the legislature can and should be doing to help with primary care, specialty medical care in our area? We only have one hospital. We used to have two. Is there anything that the legislature can do to help support the medical community in our area? Absolutely.
The medical community is, if you look at it, is being able to help the caretakers within the medical community is that, and we saw that with COVID. So many have lost their jobs and positions. I think the legislature, for one, could enact some bills that would allow people to come back to work. So many of them were fired because the governor would not allow them to come back to work because they refused to get vaccinated for whatever reasons it may be. But it would really help. There's so many hospitals that have lost out on employees working for them, and people working double shifts or working overtime, and people are tired out. Number one, just getting those people back to work and offering them opportunity again to come back to work would be a great thing. The legislature could address that in a hurry.
And Jeff, what do you think the legislature can do with regard to supporting the medical community?
I think there's several things that can be done. For example, greater incentive to, and again, this could come in terms of loan subsidies. It could come in terms of, sort of incentives, if you will, to get more doctors, more nurses, more medical practitioners willing to come to Eastern Washington or our rural communities. This is where they're needed, and we need to find incentive programs to bring them here and encourage them to set down roots here. I think too, especially in our assisted living and skilled nursing facilities, we need greater oversight in terms of the level of care. With any luck, as I say, we'll all age. We may all need, or many of us will need care in those facilities in the long run. And I am concerned about the overall quality, particularly as we see private equity move into acquiring our nursing homes and what that means in terms of the quality of care to people who are vulnerable. For that matter, I think there's incentive programs that could be created to help get more people into the CNA roles and similar roles that we need here in our area. So it starts with our schools as much as anything.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to shift gears quite drastically right now. So sorry, there's no way to segue elegantly from this way. But let's talk about energy policy. I think that's something that's in the news a lot and in Washington State with everything that's going on with energy, but also the environment and kind of difficulties there. Right now, the state is considering a variety of energy programs that will support or require electric vehicle charging, restrictions on natural gas, space and water heating, these kinds of things, energy policies that end up affecting everyday ordinary people and their ordinary everyday lives. So could you both comment, and we'll start with Jeff this time, on as the state's energy policy, particularly as it affects people here in Walla?
You know, Scott, I listened to Scott Peters from Columbia REA at a meeting last week, and he talked about just the fact that there's, you know, the legislature drew a line in the sand, but they need to be listening to the experts. They need to be like Scott, for example. You know, they need to be listening to how do we get there, right? We all know that worldwide we are going through this massive shift in energy. And I'm glad that there's been a line drawn in the sand, but we need a practical way to get there, right? And at the end of the day, it's not going to be one size fits all. The reality is we probably will need nuclear, we will need hydro, we will need wind, we will need solar. And I think it's a matter of changing our mindset from this is being taken away from us and instead towards this is opportunity for our region, where we can be a significant player in this technology, in renewables. The nation is going to continue to need clean energy, and we are one of the leading producers of that in the country. So let's take this leadership that we have, particularly here in Eastern Washington, and let's take advantage of it in terms of long-term job and expertise and revenue growth.
And Mark, what's your view?
Well, that is definitely in my wheelhouse because I'm assistant ranking member on Environment and Energy Committee. And it's very, very, very unfortunate what happened to the state of Washington. The legislature, the majority, pushed through electric vehicle purchases after 2030. Anybody buying a vehicle, it has to be electric to be registered in the state of Washington. Folks, that's less than 8 years. And we have to have it. They're looking at taking away natural gas, pushing that House Bill 1084. They tried passing that, which would take all natural gas away from any household or business. They're not supporting, for the most part, any type of hydroelectric. The governor and our U.S. senator are pushing to remove our Stinker Dam. We need nuclear. We need hydroelectric. And we need natural gas. And unfortunately, our state legislature is not going to allow that. They're pushing to eliminate a number of those things. We are way behind when it comes to infrastructure and transmission of our power. And within 8 years, we're going to be so far behind, we won't be able to charge those electric vehicles. We need to go with all of the above.
Okay, I think we have time to squeeze in one more question before closing statements. So let's talk a little bit about laws that have been passed that have already been changed or that need change further. We've had a couple questions come in about law enforcement and then the amending of the law that to address concerns that law enforcement had with the prior law, and also with the Washington State Supreme Court's decision to overturn the felony drug possession law. So maybe quickly, could we get some views on those legal changes and what's upcoming with them? And we'll start with you, Mark.
Yes, very unfortunate. In 2021, the majority in the legislature in both houses, including the governor, voted to relax majority of the laws, took away any type of power from the police, and really tied their hands. They tried to correct that in 2022, but one bill that they would refuse to bring up, even clear up to the very last day, was a pursuit bill. And that pursuit bill did not take effect. It didn't even come out of the House. And so police officers cannot pursue. Their hands are tied. We need to completely go in and reconstruct the laws that were started clear back in 2021. It is really difficult. My son is a police officer, and I worry about him and pray for him every night that something may happen, and I'm really concerned. And we experienced that with with a state patrolman here just within the last couple of weeks. It's got to change. Crime is one of our biggest issues, especially with the drugs out there and gang members. I don't want to see our district, our cities being victims of what's going on in crime.
And Jeff, would you give your views?
You know, I think with so many things related to public safety in our region, we've got to just take a step back and look at what are the root issues, right? And we know that a big chunk of it is the fact that we need a detox center. We know we need to do more with mental health. And fundamentally, we need to listen to our local law enforcement. We need to understand the resources that they believe they need and the laws that they believe will help them to be most effective. And we need to move from there. You know, we're here, you know, on talking with the Walla Walla Chamber of Commerce, but I can tell you that over in Denton County, which is part of the 16th, there's a significant conversation around the public safety funds that are available and accumulating a massive surplus over there. Perhaps the legislature needs to explore better ways to make use of those funds, and again, work in combination with our local law enforcement to make use of the money that is already been delegated in this area. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for, other than for our closing statements. And so, Mark, you'll have the opportunity to go first on your closing statement.
Okay, thank you, Claire. We have a choice of what we want to see in Olympia. At this time, we have been the minority since 1999, but we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. We have an opportunity to change that, and we're seeing that within this midterm. We can change things back to bring some common sense to Eastern Washington and the whole state of Washington. I ask that you consider what I'm talking about when it comes to energy, when it comes to crime, when it comes to property rights, and which includes also housing, because there's a number of things we can do. And we can, as I said before, we can bring balance to our state. And that's what needs to happen. We also need to finally also take away the control that the governor has on emergency powers. He has perpetual emergency powers at this time, and the majority in the legislature refused to go in there and limit what he has. So there's a lot of change we can make, and we have an opportunity to do it this year. And I ask that you look to change that with me and go back to Olympia and make those changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Jeff, your closing statement, please.
You know, I look at this in really simple terms. Where do we want to be 2 years from now? Because when we look at the legislative reports that have come out of the incumbent, not much has gotten done in the last 2 years. And it's easy to blame that on the governor. It's easy to blame that on the West Side. It's easy to blame that on Democrats. But it's much harder to find compromise. It's much harder to go and figure out, how do we bridge this gap across our state? How do we bridge this partisan gap? And it's not going to happen if we send Mark back. The one bill that he proposed in the last 2 years would have just stripped your property rights. I'm sorry, it's not been a productive 2 years. And I'm running in large part because at the end, 2 years from now, I want to come back and tell you we got money for Highway 12. I want to tell you that we did something for job growth in this region. I want to work on the issues that you, the voters of home, have told me matter to you. And I hope you'll send me to Olympia so that we don't have another 2 years of empty legislative reports. I also want to thank our area unions. I want to thank the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the Washington Education Association, the National Organization of Women, Planned Parenthood, and all the rest of the groups that have endorsed me, because they speak my values. And I want to thank you at home who have been part of this process. And I'd encourage you to go to electjeffstrickler.com, learn more about our campaign and our values. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll turn it back over to Kyle.
Okay, we would like to thank our candidates running for legislature. And we want to remind everybody, because we have various offices running tonight, questions that you may have submitted are not exactly valid anymore as we move into the auditor race. And so we will ask Karen and Marjorie right now, if you will please share your video with us and pop up there. Everyone who is viewing via Zoom, if you want to ask a question, please make sure that you click the Q&A down at the bottom. Again, this next race is for county auditor. I saw a couple of folks were raising their hand. That there's nothing attached to that feature that we can help you with. Please ask your question through the Q&A. And again, we'll remind you that the questions need to be relevant to the race that is happening. They need to be open-ended, and they need to be asked in a way that both candidates can respond. Please don't ask a question to one specific candidate. We had some really great questions in the last race, and so please feel free to ask those through the Q&A. Okay, Claire.
All right, off we go. So again, we'll start with opening statements, and we're going to start with the opening statement for Marjorie Denton Sanborn. Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
I'm Marjorie Denton Sanborn, and I'm running for the Walla County Auditor. I want to bring new energy and leadership to this vital county office. As a principled, proven professional, I'm running to ensure transparency, accountability, and accessibility. As do most candidates, I began my campaign with preconceived ideas. I wanted to increase confidence in local government and put my years of experience in financial services to work on your behalf. And by doing so, I wanted to ensure the integrity of our elections and update operations to 21st century standards. In other words, put technology to work to streamline operations, to reduce cost and wait lines, and to automate routine transactions. Then I started talking to people, and I've talked with people from Prescott to Burbank. I've spoken to people with stories to tell. I've talked with people that were excited about the opportunity for change. In talking with people, I've heard about stories of less than stellar customer service. I've heard stories about the inability to find information which is routinely provided online in other counties. From the incumbent herself, we've heard of a greater than 75% turnover in her department. We've heard she has let her certification as an elections administrator lapse, and that we no longer meet state requirements for certified officials. We've seen deadlines for county redistricting missed, which has limited time for public input and put our county at risk for legal action. Walla deserves a professional county auditor's office that provides the support and service that we all need to grow and thrive. As we upgrade and professionalize operations, we will create a culture of excellence in which our Valley's forefathers would be proud. I'm Marjorie Sanborn, and I ask for your support and for your vote.
Thank you, Marjorie. And Karen, your opening statement.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to listen to our concerns and views. I am Karen Martin. I am the county auditor, and I have served as county auditor for 23 years. I have been in the auditor's office for 33. I know all aspects of the auditor's office. It is not just one office regarding elections. It is 4 offices in one. We do accounting, recording, accounts payable, payroll, vehicle licensing. I've served on many committees throughout the Auditors Association. I serve on the Election Certification and Training Board. I have been certified, and yes, I did let my certification lapse because at the time I had 3 certified election administrators. I am a certified DOL operator, which requires for both of these quite some time, a year at least in licensing and 2 years in elections, and requires testing to be done that has to be passed. So born and raised here in the Walla Valley. I'm married to my husband Cherry for 44 years. We have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. I was Outstanding Auditor of the Year in 2003. And we have implemented e-recording over the last 1.5 years, 2 years. We do 60% of our recordings are done electronically. We've implemented a new financial system when I first started, and we've done are headed for another new financial system. And I've seen 4 system changes and 3 tabulator upgrade systems. The reason for no certification for me is because we've had employees resign due to retirement and other issues. Thank you.
Well, you both mentioned technology and you both mentioned kind of new technology and new things that we're doing. I'm no longer going to ask about the 21st century. We are well into the 21st century, so that's passed already. So what the second half of the 21st century, I would say, what other changes do you see are necessary? What other technological solutions can be brought to the auditor's office? And we'll start with Karen.
Well, right now we're looking at, as I said, a new financial system. The one we have is 20 years old and will be outdated here in the next, with that or without support, within the next 5 to 7 years. So we are looking at that right now. Some of our technology is limited as to what we can do. As I said, we've already done a lot of technology with recording, so people do not have to come in. The title companies do not have to come in to do their daily recordings. They're done online. That has helped with staffing issues there because they have time to do it. It's a lot easier to do the electronic recording. Elections, it is a system through the state for voter registration. The tabulation systems, there's different ones that have to be certified by the state. Those have been upgraded just recently, and we continue to look at anything that in our office that will help with the upgrades to technology. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And Marjorie, what are your ideas?
There are actually several. I have a technology background. I've worked as an IT manager. I've implemented multiple systems throughout banks. I think the opportunity that the county is currently facing with updating, upgrading, finding a new financial system is one that really opens things up to start looking at things about using debit and credit cards, not just in the auditor's office, but potentially across the county. I've heard stories about the cost that is associated to that, but then there are also soft costs that are associated with check processing and using cash. I think it would be an opportunity to start implementing debit and credit cards, not just in the auditor's office, but across the county, and then also start looking at potentially paying bi-weekly instead of monthly. Some of the turnover, I think, in the county is related to the fact that it's difficult for people that are getting monthly paychecks. It's hard to and difficult to manage that. I also believe technology relates to workflow, understanding workflow and utilizing technology to make sure that we're working strongly and efficiently. And then there's a soft side of technology, which is more about team building and ensuring that everybody has the right job that they're doing within the right role and using technology appropriately.
Okay, thank you both. So an issue that seems to be closely connected is staffing. We are in the age of quiet quitting, and there's definitely an issue of turnover, I think, in all industries, not just in any one particular office. So Marjorie, maybe you could go first in talking about staff turnover, and what would you do about staffing issues?
Quiet quitting is an interesting topic. I have managed staff, I believe, from 3 people to 36 people as far as staff is concerned. I've never experienced heavy turnover, but I believe that the reason for that oftentimes is your manager's mentality. I've always had what I consider to be a servant mentality. I was there as a manager to ensure that my staff, I knew where they wanted to go, what their career ambitions were, and what their jobs entailed, and I listened to them. I think morale is a huge issue around staff turnover. And for me, it's about building a team, ensuring that every person is valued, listening to them, understanding what their concerns are with respect to their jobs, and working with them individually.
Karen, what are your ideas?
Yeah. Well, I have had a lot of staff turnover, as my opponent would like to make relevant to everybody, that it's some issue within my office or within me. I work side by side with my staff in a lot of areas that we have. And just to put this in perspective, 4 of the people that retired were between 24 and 35 years of service with the county. So that is the majority of the time that I have been auditor as well. So I think if it was something to do with me and my morale, and service, then that would not be there. They, like I said, at 24 to 35 years of service, they're eligible for retirement. They've met their time, they've done their service to their county, and we appreciate all that they do. Some of the others, one transferred to another position within the county, and two of them moved one moved out of county due to family and medical issues, and one moved to a part-time job where she could be closer to her children. So, and the other one decided he wanted a new occupation. That is all I can tell you about why people have retired. But I work hand in hand with them, and we're recruiting to get more people, and I am working with my staff, and we are upgrading. We promote within, and then we start from the bottom. So I know what my employees are doing and what they want, and I work side by side with them.
Hey, Claire, I'm
Thank
going
you.
to step in for just a moment.
Sure.
I'd like to remind the candidates, we want you to focus on your experience, your ideas, your qualifications for the office. Because it's a forum and not a debate, we don't have enough time for candidates to respond back. And so in this format, we want you to not focus on your opponent, but focus on yourself. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll try and get a question that will do that. We've got a question come in. What would you say is the most important role of the county auditor, and why? And Karen, you can start with that.
Well, I've been asked this question before, and quite frankly, there is not one particular role that is more important than the other. Elections, of course, is very high up there. It is a very important role for anyone, any position, any county, state that has to run them. It is important, and it's ensure that we get everything done right, that the citizens can trust our election results. Accounts payable and payroll, the annual report, those are all important. They have to be done in certain timelines. It affects your bond issues and things like that. The recording, that's your land records, marriage licenses, all of that stuff. Those are important as well. And our vehicle licensing office as well. That does all of your title licensing for vehicles and vessels. We are the only office in the county that does that. We process approximately 133,000 transactions a year in vehicle licensing, and 4 to 4.5 staff do that job.
Thank you, Karen. And Marjorie, your ideas about the most important role of the county auditor?
Yeah, I don't see the most important role of the county auditor as being related to functional detail. There are a lot of things that are transactional within the county auditor's office, but I see the role of the county auditor as being a leader within the county, having vision, understanding what other counties are doing, what they are doing to take leadership roles, act as a resource to the county commissioners, act as a resource to other departments, making sure that you're working hand in hand where you are required to. And it's not transactional. There are a lot of transactional operational areas related to this particular position, but I think the critical one is being a leader in the community and in the county.
Okay, thank you both. I'm going to shift gears again a little bit. We've got an election coming up. And could we talk a little bit about the current state of elections in Walla County? Election integrity, I know, is on a lot of people's minds. And how is the county doing, and what can we do better? And we'll start with you, Marjorie.
I do not have the day-to-day aspect or relationship of understanding elections within the county at this point in time that Karen does. But what I have seen and what I have heard in talking to constituents is that there are several things. It's making voter registration accessible, having a voter registration campaign, ensuring that our minorities, that we have bilingual ballots, making sure that we involve the Secretary of State when necessary, because we may have questions about how voting is occurring. And then just generally providing oversight. But to me, it's the integrity isn't just about counting ballots. The integrity is about ensuring that everybody in the county that has the ability or the desire or can legally vote has accessibility to voting.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. And Karen.
I think the state of elections in Walla Walla County is in pretty good shape. We do everything we can to get people to vote. Voting is accessible. There's many ways to register to vote. You can register to vote online. You can register to vote at Department of Motor Vehicles. There's several other state agencies where you can register to vote. There's many avenues for someone to register to vote in Walla Walla County and statewide for that matter. We do work hand in hand with Secretary of State's office. Any questions that come up, we also have access to other counties for information. We hold weekly or daily meetings actually right now with the state. Counties get online, they talk about issues and going through. It has been a very, very challenging last 2 years in the elections department. The stress level has been very high due to public records requests relating back from the 2020 election and so forth. So that stress level is high. My staff has done a great job of handling that, those issues, and I think we are in really good shape in Walla Walla County.
So one of the questioners brought up, and I think Marjorie brought up as well, the issue of Spanish speakers and how best to serve improving customer service for the substantial percentage of Spanish speakers that we have in Walla Walla County. So Marjorie, what are your ideas? Oh, I think it's actually Karen's turn to go first. Karen, what are your ideas with regard to customer service, particularly with regard to the Latino population?
Well, we have a Latino speaking person, somebody who speaks Spanish in our office, so we always have that accessible. We have a couple others actually down in the other end of the office as well. The one that's in the elections office is going to be attending. She's got a group that she attends and will be going out and doing voter registration with them. So anything that we can do, we will be doing.
And Marjorie?
I don't think the issue is as simple as having someone who is bilingual, although that certainly is critical for us to have. It's also education around what the auditor's office does, ensuring that we have an atmosphere of being helpful as opposed to being critical of our customers. It's being able to understand and tabulate the types of transactions that we get so that we can better prepare for those and train for those, to have information available that is bilingual. I can even see the lines oftentimes at the auditor's office are long. We've all walked into that courthouse and we've seen them. To perhaps have somebody that preloads that particular line to understand what the people waiting need and are going to do, to be able to better facilitate and help. And maybe if it's a simple transaction, it's handled first, or a more complex transaction, we provide them with the paperwork first. It's just being cognizant of what the issues are and what people need to do.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think, Marjorie and Karen, what do you think are the greatest challenges in the upcoming couple of years for the auditor's office? And Marjorie, we'll start with you.
The greatest challenges, I think, relate to understanding workflow, providing staff in the office. As we've mentioned, there has been an issue related to turnover. I had originally kind of thought about technology being an answer, but I don't think it is. I think what is really critical is developing a team that works well together, that understands how they interact, and just I mean, it sounds simple, but team potlucks, those particular types of things. I really think building team is going to be critical to the auditor's office over the course of the next year or two. And then we add to that the technology and the new financial system that is coming in, working with the IT department to ensure that we have technology in place that will address workflow issues. I'm a certified workflow manager. I map processes and projects out, and then you come up with what the gaps are in the solutions. I think bringing those types of things to the auditor's office would be extremely helpful.
And Karen, what do you think the biggest challenges are?
Elections is one of our biggest challenges right now. Like I said earlier, with the records request, our public records requests actually through the entire county are a big challenge for everyone. But budget is a big one, and I do work hand in hand with the commissioners and other departments with regards to budgets and hands-on getting all of that done. The financial situation, we'll be looking at that, but that new system that will be coming in also next year, I believe it is, we will be going to a biennial budget, which will be the first time for the county to be doing that. So that's a big challenge that we'll be hitting. Staffing always is, we always run, that's one reason stress levels get high sometimes is, we are trying to do a lot with little, and we're working on that. DOL, everything is continually changing. We've heard from legislators earlier, but every year we get tons and tons of election law changes and vehicle licensing law changes, and all of that happens. So all of those things are, everything in our office is a challenge from time to time, but we work it all out together. We all collaborate on how we're going to do things.
All right, thank you, both of you, for answering the questions. And that's the end as far as the questions concerned. So we're going to move on to closing statements. And Karen, you go first this time.
Well, basically, I want to thank everybody for attending. And like I said, I feel I am the one. I have the experience. I have worked on all of these. I have been an certified election administrator. I've passed that test actually twice now. And I will be able to be recertified as quickly as probably March. I will take the test again, and we will do the election 101, and that would probably happen about March, and then I would be certified again. We are also working on another person in the office will become certified. It takes 2 to 3 years to become certified in elections, so we will get that. There is no penalties or anything like that. There are many counties within the state currently that are under the same situation where they either have one or none certified election administrators. Certified election administrator is a job qualification. I wouldn't say qualification, it's qualification. It's basically like a CPA. It's something that says you've got the knowledge to do this. It does not prevent us from doing it. There is nothing in state law that says the auditor has to be a certified election administrator. And there are other reasons that we let that pass, but I appreciate everyone who turns out and supports, and I urge everyone to turn your ballots in and get them in early. That is the best thing that you could do to help out in the election process. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Marjorie, your closing statement.
Thank you. Again, thank you everybody for attending the forum, and thank you for putting it together for us. I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about my qualifications for the position. I have worked in banking and financial services with a primary focus on audit compliance, back office operations, and technology for about 40 years. Within the scope of that level of experience, I have managed multiple projects. I have implemented new systems. I have implemented systems from the perspective of even starting with business requirements. Business requirements, for example, being one of the things that we need to look at when we start looking at debit and credit cards, and what the requirements are from the Department of Licensing. I am not new to management. I consider myself to have a great deal of vision I also am very involved in the community. I am currently the treasurer for the Little Theater of Walla Walla. I also am the costumer for them, which is an incredible amount of fun. But community is extremely important to me. And I really believe that the auditor's office needs to play a role in the community as far as working with our various populations and understanding what their needs are and how we can relate that specifically to the role that the auditor's office has within our community. Again, thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully I've convinced somebody to vote for me tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Marjorie and Karen, for that very enlightening forum. We're ready now, I think, to move on to our last forum, and I will turn it back over to Kyle.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now invite the candidates who are running for the part-time judge position to share their video. And before we move on to this one, it's a little bit different than someone who's running for the legislature or a more politically active office. So everyone needs to be aware that judges or candidates for a judicial position are prohibited from making any kind of promises as to how they would hand down rulings in the future. It's not appropriate for them to answer those types of questions. So a quick update for everybody. The questions that you submit for this office need to focus on the candidate's integrity, knowledge, ability to apply the law fairly, common sense, and freedom from bias. So it's going to look and feel a little bit different from our other candidates. Go ahead and please submit those questions via the Q&A. Again, we'd like to thank the candidates for making time for us this evening. And we're good. Go ahead, Claire.
Okay, I think we're going to start again with opening statements. Sorry, that's my phone ringing in the background. I can't do anything about it from where I am right now, but it'll stop soon. So we have two candidates today, Jared Hawkins, and Nicholas Holce for part-time judge position. And we'll start with your opening statement, Nicholas.
Thank you very much to the Chamber of Commerce and for Claire and everyone else for creating this event. And thank you to all the participants who are participating today and all the people who are watching at home. My name is Nicholas Holce. I'm a Walla Walla native. I grew up in Walla Walla, went to College Place for elementary school, went to High, graduated from Whitman College with my bachelor's degree. I also attended the Walla Walla Community College here in town and got my AA from there back in 2007. And I went on to Gonzaga for law school. Immediately after law school, I came back to Walla Walla and joined the prosecuting attorney's office. And during my time there, I handled cases in our district court, our juvenile court, and our superior court regularly. So I handled cases that were jury trials, bench trials, matters that involved every kind of motion that you could see, motions to suppress or dealing with warrants. While I was at the prosecutor's office, I also helped review warrants for law enforcement. And then I moved over to doing public defense in 2020. In my time, I've handled every kind of case from DUI and poaching up to homicide. And I've handled every kind of objection and kind of thing that would happen during a trial that would happen in district court. The reason I'm running is because I want to bring that experience to Walla Walla County and provide my input in being able to assist in providing an impartial view. Part of the job as a prosecutor was to be a quasi-judicial role. So you review things from the standpoint of what's the defense attorney going to say, what's the judge going to do. And so you have to basically have on the hat of a judge and a defense attorney when you're a prosecutor. My experience, I think, qualifies me for this role because, as I said, I've done pretty much everything that happens in district court. And so what happens in district court is predominantly criminal cases, like 90% of caseload there is criminal in nature. Our part-time judge currently handles College Place's criminal docket. So basically, I'm just going to be able to step right into handling any kind of case that's there. I just would also like to say that I was rated as exceptionally well qualified by the Latino Bar Association Judicial Review. And so I think that speaks highly for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. And Jared, would you like to give your opening statement, please?
Certainly. Thank you so much. It's great to be with all of you tonight. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope tonight just to share a little bit about myself so you can get to know me and hopefully choose me as your next part-time district court judge. I'm a husband, a father, an Air Force reservist, a business owner, and a community volunteer. My family and I have been a member of the community for 11 years. We love it here, and this community is important to us. Some of the things I've done while here and as volunteer in many different aspects, from being a Boy Scout leader to being a member of the New Rotary Club for the last 10 years. I've also coached soccer, as most people have, for Park and Rec at some time in your life. I've done that 4 or 5 years. I also volunteer as a pro bono attorney for the Blue Mountain Action Council pro bono attorney program. In 2020, I was appointed by the county commissioners to serve on the Veterans Relief Advisory Board, which is a local entity that advises the county commissioners on spending dollars to support veterans in need. And I've enjoyed all those volunteer opportunities. In addition to that, I have over 17 years of experience as an attorney. I began my career in the Air Force as a judge advocate, where I gained significant experience both prosecuting cases and defending cases. In 2011, I transferred to the Air Force Reserves and I came here to beautiful Walla Walla. Since here, I've participated in cases both in the Superior Court and in the District Court. My practice is primarily in civil cases now, but I have also defended misdemeanor level and infraction cases in the District Court. I'd advise clients on small claims matters and other civil related matters. And as I've continued my time in the Air Force, I've served in a couple of quasi-judicial roles where I've been able to handle objections, evaluate evidence, just as a judge would do in this case. And I believe I'm well suited to serve as the District Court judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. One of our first questions that came in I thought was rather interesting. The part-time judge is required to fill in for the presiding judge when that judge isn't available. And in addition to judicial duties, the presiding judge is in charge of the district court staff. So what experience do you have in supervising personnel and dealing with human resource issues? And we'll give this question to Jared first.
Thank you very much for that question. I have significant experience in that area. While I was still on active duty, I operated my own office as an area defense counsel. Since being here in Walla Walla, I've run my law firm Hawkins Law for about 8 years now, where I manage a staff of 3 other individuals. As an officer in the Air Force, one of my primary duties is to lead and inspire and to take care of an office, a staff. Right now, I'm what's called a lieutenant colonel. So when on duty, I may supervise anywhere from 5 people to 20 people. In my current legal practice, one of my areas of law that I handle is employment law, where I have significant experience advising local business owners and nonprofits on how to work with employees, both how to train and to mentor, how to discipline. All of those things help prepare me well to lead the court staff when the full-time judge is absent. I'm also a voluntary clergy member in the area. I was the leader of a local congregation for 3 years and supervised about 300 people in a number of different volunteer roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And Nicholas, how about you? Remember to unmute.
There we go. When I was at the prosecuting attorney's office, I had several legal assistants who I would routinely work with. And so I knew that every single person that I had who worked with me on my cases had a different approach to handling their various caseloads. And having worked with the district court staff for basically since 2013, when I started at the prosecutor's office, I'm very familiar with everyone, pretty much everyone who's there. I know that when you're interacting with someone, that if they have questions or concerns, how to be approachable and able to resolve those questions. I was on the hospice board here in Walla Walla County, so I'm familiar with some of the staffing issues that came up while I was president of the board and while I was on the board just generally. So I think that experience will be helpful. When I was at the prosecutor's office, I also saw when Mr. Nagel would be out on vacation and how the chief deputy would handle cases or questions or concerns that would come up. And so I had, I think, a good example for how to handle kinds of questions with staffing or any kind of issue in that respect. So I would submit that basically based on that experience and also the fact that my clientele is oftentimes difficult to work with, that would be helpful to handle any questions during the district court.
All right, thank you. I'm going to throw a question that it just probably comes from me. And that is, this is an interesting position because it's a part-time position. It's not a full-time position. And so why is this a position that you want? Why are you interested in a part-time position? And Nicholas, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. So one of the reasons that I want to be the part-time judge is because I understand that even though it's considered only a 1/10 position, there's a lot that you can do with the position. So when I was a prosecuting attorney back in 2015, I helped create the juvenile therapeutic court for our superior court for juvenile cases. In 2014, when I was a prosecutor, I had gone to a DUI training course, and they told me, when you go back to Walla Walla, ask to create a DUI court because there are grants for these kinds of programs. And so I did. And I was declined to pursue that. And so I've realized that you have to have a judge who's willing to pursue alternative treatment court programs. In speaking to city officials with College Place and Walla Walla, the sheriff, chiefs of police, law enforcement, defense attorneys, everyone agrees that the more options that we have in our district court, the better, whether that be veterans court, mental health court, DUI court, drug court, or combinations of the above. There are grants for a number of these different.
Am I frozen or is Nicholas frozen?
So I think
to Walla Walla.
Nicholas
I
is
reached out to
frozen
them
there.
because.
Hey, Nicholas, can you take an
Okay.
extra, excuse me, an extra 30 seconds and repeat your response there? You froze on us.
Oh dear. Okay. So I've worked with or reached out to the executive director for the Homeless Alliance and various other agencies. And so I would like to create a nexus in our district court that can help people who are in and out of the district court regularly with minor offenses. I think that you have to have a judge who's willing to bring that to the table. And I'm very excited about doing that because I've seen how it works in Superior Court.
Thank you. Technology is wonderful, isn't it? Jared, would you like to give your answer to that question?
Certainly. I've been in public service for about 18 years, and I love my current business. I love my clients. They're wonderful clients. But in the end, I always look for an opportunity to do good in the community, and I see serving as a district court judge as an opportunity to do just that. Nicholas and I totally agree that one of the great ways for a district court judge to benefit our community is through these therapeutic courts. In August, I went with a subcommittee from the Veterans Relief Advisory Board, and we attended one of those courts in Benton County. It was a veteran-specific court. And as I sat there in the jury box and watched the judge welcome people charged of crimes come to the podium and describe what they had done that week to make personal growth in their lives, whether it was community service, whether it was going to therapy or treatment. It was truly inspiring to see the camaraderie among the veterans as they helped each other overcome the crimes. Through these therapeutic courts, individuals have the opportunity to commit to a lot of very specific things in the hopes of either a reduction in charge or a dismissal of their charge. And I hope as a district court judge to help provide some positive change in the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You both mentioned, I think, that the district court is primarily a criminal court. I think 90% was the figure that was thrown out for that. And so could you comment on your criminal experience and what you're feeling about criminal trials and your general judicial philosophy? Jared, you can go first.
You bet. If I reach back in the recesses of my brain, I remember criminal procedure in law school, and it was one of my favorite classes. And as I entered the Air Force, I was a prosecutor primarily for 4 years. And then I was an area defense counsel for 3 years. And I traveled around the Western United States, only doing litigated trials. No, I'm sorry, trials in general. I've done at least 20 trials in front of jury or bench trial litigated trials. I've done other administrative hearings. I've been in front of juries or judges for felony or misdemeanor level cases. Since coming here to Walla Walla, I've been able to handle some misdemeanors and some infractions in front of our district court. I find that criminal procedure and criminal matters are interesting, and I believe I'm well prepared to handle these lower level cases that process through the district court.
Thank you, Jared. Nicholas?
So my experience with criminal law is, like I said, my entire career. I've handled, like I said, bench trials and jury trials in our district court and in our superior court. I've handled cases in Walla Walla County and Columbia County. My wheelhouse is basically complex cases. I've drafted more motions than probably the majority of my colleagues who do public defense in the last 2 or so years. I've dealt with complex kinds of trials, both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, where we had witnesses who were experts for the defense or for the prosecution. And because of the fact that I've had so many trials here in town, I'm aware of the importance of the judge getting it right, because a trial can be determined by how objections are ruled on, and if the objection is sustained or not sustained, or how it's sustained or not sustained, can have a bearing on how the entire trial could proceed. Like I said, I've handled pretty much everything that our district court does, and I would be able to hit the ground running on day one. Like I said, also with search warrants, that's another thing that happens in our district court that the judges review, and I'm very familiar with all of the search procedures and requirements for that, so I can give a thorough analysis for warrants.
So a follow-up to that question, what do you see the challenges of going from being in front of the bench to being on the bench? Have you thought about what that switch will look like, and what conclusions did you come to? We'll start with Nicholas.
Sure. So in a practical sense, the vast majority of cases in our district court are handled through plea negotiations. And so generally speaking, the parties have thoroughly negotiated how the case is going to resolve before it gets to the judge. And so the judge oftentimes only has the information that's provided by the parties. And so if it's an agreed recommendation, the judge doesn't know necessarily whether there are aggravating factors or extenuating circumstances, because it's just what's presented. So from the standpoint of sitting on the bench, certainly I'll have potentially less information, but I think, like Jared and I were talking about earlier, the bigger opportunity is the ability to bring in some kinds of treatment opportunities, treatment courts and things like that. And my experience has, I have clients who are in our adult recovery court program who are just opting into it, which is the felony version of this. Like I said, when I was in the juvenile court process as a prosecutor, I had, I handled the cases that were going through that process. So I don't know that it's going to be a huge change for me, because like I said, also as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, I think about these things from the other side. What are the legal issues? What are the factual issues? And when I was a prosecutor, I would say, okay, well, there's a problem here. I have to dismiss this case or reduce these charges just because procedurally that's what's required. And I'll do the same thing as a judge.
How about you, Jared? What do you see as the challenges of going from in front of the bench to being on the bench?
A few years ago, I sat for the first time as what's called a legal advisor on a discharge board in the Air Force, where you serve as in a judicial capacity, where you determine what instructions go to the jury, you evaluate objections over evidence. And it was surprising, when you're suddenly the one to receive those objections. It's hard to handle at first, but so it's important that we're prepared, for that instance. So something that I've done over this year in anticipation of moving into a different role is I've spent some time with Judge Johnson, who's a Superior Court judge, talked to him about his workload. Obviously, it's a different court, so the workload is different, but I've listened to, heard some of his challenges, learned from those challenges. I spent quite a bit of time this year observing both Judge Shadeen and Judge Knowlton to see how they handle cases. And so I'll continue to do that the rest of this year so that I'm more prepared to handle those things that only a judge can experience.
Okay. outside of your legal experience, what other qualifications or general life experience do you have that you think will set you up for success as a judge? And I'm going to ask you to be specific. I'm always asking my students to be specific. Can you come up with some specific examples of something from your life that makes you feel like you're well qualified to be a judge outside of legal things? And we'll start with Jared this time.
You bet. So first thing that comes to my mind is deployment training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, where people shot at me, but just kidding. As a judge, you do come under fire. And so it's important that you be a professional in every way. I think the leadership that I talked about before in my answer about administration, I think is important. Being able to lead a court staff. I think we have excellent court staff. We have 2 wonderful judges right now. And so I think my leadership experience helps me prepare me to lead the court staff and also to run a courtroom. Defendants can be quite boisterous and unkind at times. So it's important to be able to lead a courtroom. A completely separate area, in some of my volunteer capacity, I've volunteered as a church leader and have gone out to visit with members experiencing homelessness or experiencing lack of food. And meeting with those individuals and trying to understand what their immediate needs are really changes you. And so in volunteer efforts, I've been able to hear how some people live that I don't live. And I think that prepares me to listen well as a judge. The last thing, frankly, I think as a volunteer coach and a parent, practicing helping people learn and grow gives me experience for interacting with defendants as they choose to take responsibility and learn from their actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And Nicholas, how about you? And again, specific examples, please.
So specific examples of life experience that would qualify me to be a judge. Okay,
Yes.
so I've done a couple of different projects. So when there have been mock trials, I've been the judge for the mock trial. And so during that process, you give feedback to students about here's what you'll actually see in court, here are things that you do. When you object or make a record, make sure you do this or make sure you don't do that. So certainly it's important to provide feedback to counsel if there's questions or concerns, or to the parties who are there. I was the first clerk for Judge Lorman in Superior Court back in 2012. And so while I was there, he would give me projects to work on his active cases. And so during that process, I would go back to him and just kind of talk through what his thought process was and why his process was the way it was and how he would potentially rule. And so I would work on a little memoranda for him. I've served on like I said, the board for Walla Community Hospice. And during that process, like I said, we had a couple of questions about employment and a lot of different projects. We did some processes that kind of were designed to expand the services that hospice did. And then I was also in Fiddler on the Roof, and nothing more important than being the fiddler on Fiddler on the Roof.
And being on the roof, presumably. All right, so shifting gears again, we talked a little bit about criminal, but there are civil cases and small claims cases in district court as well. What about your experience qualifies you to handle those kinds of cases and balancing the caseload from the civil to the criminal? And we'll start with Nicholas.
Sure. So there are a couple of different kinds of civil cases. So no contact orders are, I think, one of the larger portions of civil cases that happen in our district court. And so as a prosecuting attorney, obviously I saw cases from the criminal side, but since I started private practice in 2020, I've handled no contact order matters both from the petitioner side and the defendant side, both in district court and in Superior Court. I've handled quite a few of those, also in Columbia County as well. So I'm well versed in the analysis that's going to have to go into any kind of no contact order matter. With respect to infractions, all of our infractions in Walla County are handled in our district court. And so when I was a prosecutor, we generally did not appear on those matters, but occasionally an officer would ask me, hey, could you help me by asking me questions, or help you navigate through this specific infraction, because I've got questions or concerns. I want to make sure that the judge is going to hear everything that's important. And so I did. And then the other thing is small claims, which Generally speaking, attorneys are not involved in small claims, and so I haven't really been involved in that process. But those are, I think, very few compared to the number of criminal cases, and certainly what the part-time judge is going to hear.
Okay, and Jared, what's your response to that question?
Since being here in Walla Walla, I've been involved in a lot of civil related cases, both cases that have gone to trial or been involved through motion hearings. In the district court realm, there's certainly those topics that Nicholas talked about. There are also collection matters and contract disputes and other things that will come before a judge. It is important that the judge be able to handle those cases and handle those civil arguments that come before them. I think I may be one of the unique attorneys in town that has helped with small claims matters. As Nicholas mentions, attorneys usually aren't allowed in small claims unless by the permission of the judge. But I have helped clients prepare their claims, prepare to present their cases, and have been overjoyed to hear that by helping them prepare, they were well presented, were able to present their case well to the judge and do well. So I think I've handled a number of civil cases that prepare me for any kind of civil cases that might come before the district court.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one more question because I think it's relevant. And that is, again, Walla Walla County has a substantial number of Spanish speakers. How do you think the district court is doing in terms of serving our Spanish speaking population? And as a judge, what do you think would be your role in making sure that they're well served? And we'll start with Jared on this one.
I'm not fluent, but I spent a couple years overseas learning before college, learning Spanish. And I've sat in both of our courts and listened to interpreters interpret Spanish. And it's interesting when you know Spanish and hear an interpreter. And I can tell you that there's room for improvement, because sometimes what's interpreted isn't exactly what was said. So I think knowing Spanish will help me oversee that and understand that. I am very pleased to see the efforts in both Superior Court and District Court in providing interpreters. I think there's probably, like many other career fields, there's probably a shortage of linguists. I was in District Court once recently, and it was not the interpreter docket, and so they had to rely on a court staff, and she did a good job interpreting, but you could tell it wasn't necessarily her primary duty. So I'd continue to work with our wonderful court staff and full-time judge to make sure that we have sufficient translators present. As I sit in the audience recently and watch those who process through the court, there are a significant number of Spanish speakers, and so I think it's important we put resources so those individuals can fully be represented and understand what's going on.
Thank you. And Nicholas?
Thank you. So just to remind everyone, I did receive an exceptionally well qualified rating from the Latinx Bar Association, which did consider that. During their analysis, they asked questions of other attorneys and individuals who know me and are familiar with my efforts. And so that was part of their analysis when they came to that conclusion. With respect to access to the courts, one of the things that I want to do is update the local court rules. In talking to our current part-time judge, Judge Knowlton, he'd said that updating the rules would be an important thing that he just hadn't gotten around to. I think it might be important to also see about translating those rules into Spanish so that individuals who are appearing representing themselves are able to have the same access to the information. Just as Jared said, it's important to have interpreters who are available for court. And currently, Walla Walla has several people who provide their services, one who's certified though, and I work with him regularly. With respect to court staff, we have several people who are able to speak Spanish at the district court, and they have been fantastic whenever I've been there, if I've seen them interacting with the community, to be able to step up. And so certainly I think continuing to provide access to resources and information in Spanish is going to be important for the court, and I would like to pursue that as well.
All right, thank you both for your answers to the questions. We're done with the question portion and ready to wrap up for the evening with closing statements. And Jared, you'll go first.
Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. I also want to specifically thank Nicholas. This has been a very clean campaign, and I appreciate his professionalism. As I conclude my remarks tonight, I hope I've shared a little snapshot of the experience that I will bring to the bench. I think this position goes beyond experience, though. It's also important to consider the demeanor, the professionalism, the personality of the individual sitting on the bench. I think through my life experiences, whether it's as a city attorney in a busy city council meeting with angry citizens, or in a nonprofit board meeting, advising members about following the law, to some of the experiences I've had around the world, those prepare me well to be able to listen, to be respectful, and in the district court, in many ways, help pro se individuals get through their case without, stepping into their role as an attorney. I'd encourage you, if you'd like to know more about me, to go to my website, electjaredhawkins.com. I'm pleased to have a number of endorsements there on my website, including a recent endorsement from the Walla Commission Deputies Association, as well as a number of attorneys and elected officials, totaling at least 150 local individuals that endorse me. So I encourage you to review that list, and you'll likely see somebody that you know, and I encourage you to reach out and ask them why they endorse me. I'm also grateful to the over 60 donors that I've had to my campaign. Obviously, as a judicial candidate, I don't ask for donations. Those have been requested through my committee and not through me, and I just appreciate the broad support that I've had throughout the community. Serving in this capacity isn't a career progression for me, and instead it's a way to continue to do good in the community and hopefully make more of a difference than I can in private practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And Nicholas, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. And thank you again to the chamber, and thank you to Jared for his efforts and everything that we've gone through this process. It's obviously not something that either of us probably were contemplating a few years ago. And so it's been quite an adventure for, I think, both of us. I would just like to ask the people of Walla to recognize that this is an important role, even though it's a small role, that it has the opportunity to impact people greatly because of the number of orders, the number of rulings that come out of our district court, the various facets that people don't necessarily think about that may impact them directly or indirectly. Like I said, with these treatment programs, whether you know someone who's been charged with a crime or someone who's a victim of a crime, probably how they were addressed during the court process is going to have a significant impact on whether they are able to rehabilitate or not. Throughout my campaign, I've made every effort to surround myself with people who know the court, and specifically the district court, and who can give me input and insight into what works and what doesn't work. For example, questions about improving the district court with adding e-filing, updating the court rules, expanding various services that our court has, are all ideas that came from people who work or have worked in our district court. And so I've got support of people who are still in the district court system, who work there. And I would invite people to also go to electnicholasholce.com to see more information about me and who's endorsed me. And if you look at my list of attorneys who have endorsed me, it's people who practice criminal law. It's people who know what happens in the vast majority of cases in our district court. And they support me because they realize that I'll be able to help people get through this system in a way that helps all of Walla. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. And now I'll turn it back over to Kyle.
Okay, thank you. Special thank you to Claire for moderating tonight. You did a wonderful job. We really appreciate your help, as well as a thank you to all of our candidates. It's not an easy thing to run for office. We appreciate your willingness to serve the community and to step up and do what a lot of people are maybe afraid to do. So we appreciate your courage and your willingness to serve the people in the community. I would like to point out there was a moment there at the end of the state rep race where I probably should have stepped in. It was right at the end with the closing. Maybe comments got a little bit too personal towards Representative Klicker, and unfortunately in our format, he did not have an opportunity to respond. So we offered him an additional 30 seconds. He politely declined, so my apologies on the formatting issue there. That prevented a response. But again, thank you to all of our candidates for participating. I would like to remind everyone that if you are not registered to vote, you can do so in person or by mail. If you want to do that in person, you go down to the county courthouse, but it's also very convenient to do online. And you can go to votewa.gov, and that will walk you through the process. You can either check your status as a registered voter, whether you are registered or not, or you can register there online. We encourage all eligible folks to register and to vote in this upcoming election. Again, thank you to everyone who participated tonight. We will be back again tomorrow night with candidates running for seat 2, District 16 for the state legislature, with the candidates running for prosecuting attorney, as well as those running for county commissioner. So if you have not registered for that, please do so on the Chamber's website or on our Facebook page or event page. And you can also rewatch this forum. It will be available on the Chamber's YouTube channel and Facebook page. So if you missed something and want to go back, please go ahead and do that. Share it with someone if they were unable to attend tonight. So thanks to the AAUW. Thank you to our local Realtors Association and to my staff here at the Chamber who make this happen. Thank you, everybody, and good night.